library time.
It's April. That means it's Poetry Month. Yay! And I get to share with you an author I've been wanting to share all year. Her name is Candace Fleming. She has written everything from award-winning picture books to incredibly detailed, fascinating biographies like this one on circus master P.T. Barnum. And she's written this chapter book series, The Fabled Fourth Graders and The Fabled Fifth Graders of Aesop Elementary. If you're fans of Wayside School or My Weird School and like funny books, these might be for you. The kids at Aesop Elementary, it's one class, it starts in fourth grade, and they're a little rambunctious. At the beginning of this book, they get a new teacher, Mr. Jupiter, who starts to set things straight. And every chapter is written like an Aesop's fable. Things happen in school, then there's a moral. Let's see if you guys can figure out what the moral to this one is, even before I get to it. I think you'll see it coming. This is my favorite Poetry Month chapter. It's called There Was Once a Man from Denmark. Now, Lil Diddy was the most poetic girl at Aesop Elementary School. "Ode to a popsicle," Lil announced at recess one morning after finding a discarded stick on the tetherball court. And while Jackie and Calvin waited impatiently for her to move so they could play, she recited, "Oh, empty stick, stained with orange memory, you lie abandoned, once full of licks, now full of ants. You dump." "Oops," Jackie grinned. "Sorry." "Ignoramus," huffed Lil, rubbing the side of her head. "Whatever," said Jackie. She served the ball. That afternoon, Mr. Jupiter made an exciting announcement. "Today, we will be beginning our poetry unit. Everyone, please open your Language Arts for Dummies book to page 837. That's a big poetry book. "Hooray!" clapped Lil. "Ugh," moaned the rest of the class. For the next half hour, Mr. Jupiter talked about haiku and sonnets and limericks. "I know a limerick," cried Lenny. He recited, "There once was a man from Denmark, went to dinner with his dear sweetheart. At the table he burped, he belched, and he slurped. Even worse, he started to..." Mr. Jupiter coughed loudly. "Thank you for that, inspirational poem, Leonard." Lenny grinned. "Now then, class," said Mr. Jupiter, "we're going to have a contest." "A contest?" cried Jackie. "What kind of a contest?" "Baseball, tetherball, basketball, tetherball." She flexed a well-developed bicep. "Is it a beauty contest?" asked Victoria, and she flipped her golden hair. "Or a pie-eating contest?" asked Ham, and he smacked his lips. "Is it, huh?" "No," answered Mr. Jupiter. "It's a poetry contest. If everyone memorizes at least 20 lines of poetry, we'll have a class pizza party." Ham smacked his lips again. "Make mine pepperoni." What were we talking about again?" said Mr. Jupiter. "Poetry," cried Bernadette. "And pizza," said Ham. "Right," said Mr. Jupiter. "Everyone has a chance to win pizza, but the student who memorizes the most lines of poetry wins this." From the front row, Lil squealed, "It's Emily Dickinson! It's the complete works of Emily Dickinson!" "Emily who?" asked Rose. "You know," said Lil. "I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too?" "I'm somebody," said Rose, "so speak for yourself." "Actually," said Mr. Jupiter, "Lil was reciting a poem written by Emily Dickinson, the world's greatest poet," Lil gushed. Jackie's hand shot in the air. "Mr. Jupiter," she said, "this contest isn't fair." "Why not?" asked Mr. Jupiter. "Because Lil already knows tons of poems. She has an advantage." "But when we run relay races or play kickball, you have the advantage," Mr. Jupiter pointed out. "That's different," said Jackie. "How?" asked Mr. Jupiter. But before Jackie could answer, Miss Turner poked her head in and Mr. Jupiter had to step into the hall. The moment he was gone, Lil turned around in her seat. She stuck her tongue out at Jackie. You're just mad because you know I'm going to win, she said, and you can't stand to lose anything, not even a poetry contest. Jackie felt her cheeks turning hot. Who cares about winning a poetry contest anyway, she asked. Poetry's stupid. Maybe it's not the poetry that's stupid, Lil shot back. Ooh, whistled Emberly. That stings. Jackie's cheeks burned. Ignoramus, hissed Lil. Come on, Jackie, urged Bernadette. You can't let little Miss Sonnet get away with that. Jackie's cheeks were positively on fire. You might be able to dribble a ball, Lil went on, but you can't memorize a ballad. Jackie erupted. Yes, I can. And she pointed her finger at Lil. I challenge you to a race. A poetry race. You're on, said Lil. And for the rest of the afternoon, the fourth graders worked on the thermometer graphs that they would use to record the number of lines they were going to memorize and recite. Lil cut and pasted and hummed. And Jackie cut and pasted and moaned. Ugh, what had she been thinking? How would she ever beat Lil? The next afternoon, Mr. Jupiter asked, Does anyone they have a poem they'd like to recite? I do, cried Lil. It's called I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, and it was written by William Wordsworth. And, she smiled at Jackie, it's 24 lines long. Then she crossed her hands over her stomach and she recited, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vale and hill, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. The poem went on and on. At her desk, Jackie groaned. She didn't get it. What was the point? Why was the cloud lonely? Why was poetry so hard to understand? Word perfect, said Mr. Jupiter when Lil finished. Does anyone else have a poem today? He looked straight at Jackie. Jackie slipped down in her chair. She'd meant to have one, but the words refused to stick in her head. All those lines, all those stanzas, Jackie hadn't known where to start memorizing. It would help if poems were written about something interesting, she thought. But no, they all had to be about stupid stuff like clouds and loneliness and things that didn't make any sense. Anyone else? Asked Mr. Jupiter. A few kids raised their hands. As they recited, Lil turned back to look at Jackie. She mouthed. Not if I can help it, bowed Jackie. Jackie rushed to the library after school. That is always a good place to go. You have to help me, she begged Miss Turner. I feel like it's the 9th inning and I'm down 10 runs and I have 2 outs. The librarian nodded her head in understanding. I think I have just the poem for you. And pulling a thick book off the shelf, she opened it to the last page. Jackie looked at the poem and gasped. That must be 50 lines long. 58 to be exact, replied Miss Turner. 58? A poem that long? Well, a poem that long might just beat Lil's total. All she had to do was... Jackie glanced at the poem again. Her heart sank. How am I going to memorize all that? She sighed. You can't win with no one on base, replied Miss Turner. You have to take it one hit at a time. Or, said Jackie, with dawning understanding, one line at a time. All week, Jackie worked on the poem, slowly, steadily. By Wednesday, she'd memorized 6 lines. By Thursday, she'd memorized 10 lines, and by Friday, she was a nervous wreck. Everyone was racking up lines of poetry, everyone but her. Victoria recited Pippa's song by Robert Browning, The Year in the Spring and Days at the Morn. Amisha recited Louder Than a Clap of Thunder by Jack Pilutsky. Louder than a clap of thunder, louder than an eagle screams. Ah, ah. Bruce recited the Blasto bubblegum jingle. Very chewy berry pop, sticky in your hairy glop. But Mr. Jupiter said that didn't count. And every afternoon, Lil stood and recited a poem. Roses by George Eliot. You love the roses, so do I. I wish the sky would rain down roses. The Eclipse by Richard Eberhart. I stood out in the open cold to see the essence of the eclipse. And Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. What's that about? Said Ham. Death, replied Stanford. What else? Ugh, gagged Ham. By Friday, Lil's poetry score stood at 56 lines. Jackie's was 0. After school, Lil loudly announced, This contest is so boring. There's just no competition. Her friends, Ashley A. and Ashley B., glanced at Jackie and giggled. Jackie's jaw tightened. After all, Lil went on, everyone knows I can run rings around you-know-who when it comes to poetry. The girls giggled again. Jackie's fists clenched. Why, I'm so much better. I could win this race without reciting another line of poetry, declared Lil, and the Ashleys giggled a third time. And Jackie exploded. Try it, she cried. I will, said Lil, and she smiled smugly and sauntered away. All weekend, Jackie worked on the poem. Slowly, steadily. She skipped bowling practice and memorized 6 lines. She skipped gymnastics meet and memorized 7 more lines. She even skipped watching Wrestle Dementia on television and she memorized 10 more lines. By Monday morning, she knew half the poem by heart, but still had a long way to go. The shot clock's ticking, she told herself. I need to score. She stole peeks at the poem during social studies. She muttered snatches of it during spelling. She recited it in her head during hula dancing. By Friday afternoon, she was still 7 lines short. Any poems? Mr. Jupiter asked. Hands around the room shut up, but not Lil's. All week, she had lounged around confidently in her chair, smiling and picking purple polish off of her thumbnail. The complete works of Emily Dickinson lay on Mr. Jupiter's desk. Ah, it seemed to glitter in the sunlight. Jackie didn't raise her hand either. Instead, she mumbled to herself while Bernadette recited Carla Kuskin's Me, 14 lines. Emberly recited Ken Nesbitt's The Amusement Park, 8 lines. And Lenny recited Ogden Nash's The Eel, 2 lines. Anyone else? Asked Mr. Jupiter. Everyone looked at Jackie. She looked down at the poem on her desk. Then it's time to declare the winner in our class poetry contest, said Mr. Jupiter, and he moved toward the prize book. Lil moved to stand. Jackie gulped. It was now or never. Mr. Jupiter, she said, I have a poem. Snorted Lil. It'll have to be really long to beat me. It is, said Jackie. It's Casey at the Bat by Ernest L. Thayer. For the first time in 2 weeks, Lil looked worried. But that's 58 lines long, she gasped. She glanced at her poetry thermometer. If Jackie really had memorized that poem, she'd win. Lil shook her head. It's too long. You'll never remember it all. Jackie began. The outlook wasn't brilliant for the Mudville 9 that day. The score stood 4-2 with but one inning more to play. And for the next 15 minutes, Jackie recited and recited and recited 1 line at a time. It was as nerve-wracking as playing in the tetherball championships, as exhausting as running a marathon, and just as exhilarating. Jackie sprinted towards the finish line, and somewhere men are laughing, and somewhere children shouted, but there is no joy in Mudville. She took a last deep breath. Mighty Casey has struck out. For a moment, the room fell silent. Then, home run, whooped Calvin. Grand slam, cried Rose. The winner and still class champion, shouted Emberly. Jackie Jumpa! And everyone but Lil cheered as Mr. Jupiter presented Jackie with the book. Lil blinked back a tear. Jackie noticed. Here, she said, holding out the complete works of Emily Dickinson. You take it. Really? Said Lil. Her eyes shone. You want me to have it? Well, I don't want it, said Jackie. It's a book of poetry, for gosh sakes. Lil pressed the book to her chest for a few seconds. Then she waxed poetic. She tackled the ballad, she shot, and she scored. She rounded the bases. I'm totally floored. Jackie blushed. Ham smacked his lips. Enough with the poetry, huh? When do we order the pizza? Moral? Do you want to say it? Slow and steady wins the race. If you had this book right now, you could try the next chapter, which is The Bad, the Beautiful, and the Stinky. Thank you for letting me read that. Thank you for hanging out for a whole chapter. I hope you guys are having a wonderful time at home, hopefully reading poetry, writing some poetry. I'd love to hear it. See you next time. Bye.